The Commons. Clara lived her life in blueprints. By day, they were the cold, sterile CAD files of sterling landscapes, where she designed soulless suburban paradises for clients who wanted nature tamed and sanitized. By night, they were the passionate, impossible sketches in her worn notebook. Rooftop gardens for low-income housing, sensory parks for disabled children, green corridors that stitched neglected neighborhoods back together. The first set paid the interest on her crippling student loans. The second was the only thing that paid her soul. "This is the big one, Clara," her boss, Mark, had said, dropping a thick binder on her desk. "Oakwood Landing, luxury condos, rooftop infinity pool, the works. It's a blank slate. Make us proud." Clara flipped through the site analysis. Blank slate was a lie. The plans involved leveling a city block in a historic, working-class neighborhood, a place with a century of history. The centerpiece of the demolition, a sprawling, beloved community garden. The first community board meeting was a war zone, and the general of the opposing army was Ben. He spoke with a fire that seemed to warm the stuffy gymnasium, his voice ringing with passion for the families who would be displaced, for the elderly residents who found solace in the garden. He wasn't just an activist, he was a protector, a part of the place they wanted to erase. Clara, standing in the back in her corporate blazer, felt an uncomfortable mix of professional dread and personal admiration. She found him afterward, coiling an extension cord. "You're with Sterling, aren't you?" he asked, not unkindly. "I saw your lanyard." She nodded, bracing for a fight. "I just want you to know," she said quietly, "that your garden has a perfect southern exposure for heirloom tomatoes, and the soil composition is ideal for bee balm." Ben stopped, surprised. He looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time. "You're a plant person," he said, a slow, curious smile spreading across his face. "I'm a plant person," she confirmed. Their first date wasn't dinner. It was turning compost at the Oakwood garden. He showed her the scrawny apple tree the kids called Sir Reginald, and she diagnosed its case of powdery mildew on site. Surrounded by the scent of damp earth and blooming lavender, she felt the corporate armor she wore every day begin to crack. He didn't see a condo designer. He saw the woman who knew how to save a dying tree. Their relationship bloomed in secret. Late-night walks through his neighborhood, where every porch had a story. Quiet evenings in her apartment, where she showed him her secret sketchbook, the dreams she thought were dormant. He saw the real Clara, the architect who wanted to build bridges, not walls. And she saw the real Ben, a man whose wealth was measured in relationships, not revenue. The lie began to feel like a stone in her chest. At work, Mark demanded she add more exclusive, defensive architecture to the plans, features designed to keep the public out. With Ben, she'd listen to him strategize how to fight the very project she was being paid to create. She was living two lives, and the fault line between them was threatening to tear her apart. The earthquake hit on a Tuesday. Ben's friend pointed Clara out from a photo of the Sterling Landscapes team in a business journal. "That's her," he said, "the lead architect." At the same time, Mark called Clara into his office, his face grim. He slid a photo across the desk, taken by a colleague. It was of her and Ben, laughing in the garden. "Care to explain what you're doing with the leader of the opposition?" The confrontation with Ben was worse than she could have imagined. It wasn't loud or angry. It was quiet and devastating. "Were you just gathering intel, Clara? Finding our weaknesses?" he asked, the hurt in his eyes a physical blow. Was any of it real? Her answer was a choked whisper. "It was all real, Ben." But the words sounded hollow, even to her. Mark's ultimatum was cold and simple. "This project is worth millions. I don't care how you do it, but you will get that plan approved by the city council. Neutralize the opposition. You're either on this team or you're not." The threat was clear. Her career, her ability to pay her debts, Her entire future was on the line. That night, in her apartment, Clara was surrounded by the ghosts of her choices. The glossy, cruel blueprints of Oakwood Landing on her table, her sketchbook of dreams on her couch. She was trapped between financial ruin and moral bankruptcy. Then her eyes fell on a photo pinned to her corkboard, a picture of her and Ben, covered in dirt, proudly holding up a ridiculously large zucchini from the garden. A decision clicked into place. It wasn't about choosing Ben or choosing her job. It was about choosing herself. She swept the corporate plans onto the floor. She opened a fresh page in her sketchbook, then a new file on her computer. She began to draw, not for Sterling, but for the garden, for Sir Reginald the apple tree, for the families, for the woman she was supposed to be. At the final city council meeting, Mark delivered a slick presentation about profit and progress. Then, Clara walked to the podium. "My name is Clara Evans," she said, her voice shaking but clear, "and I am the lead architect on the Oakwood Landing project. I am here today to formally resign from Sterling Landscapes and present an alternative." A gasp went through the room. She presented the Oakwood Commons, a design that didn't destroy but integrated. Mixed-income apartments wrapped around the existing garden, which would become a public park, a rooftop farm, a community kitchen, a daycare. It was brilliant, humane, and financially viable. Ben, sitting in the back row, watched her, his expression shifting from shock to stunned admiration. The room erupted. Reporters swarmed her. The council was in an uproar. In the chaos, she felt a hand on her arm. It was Ben. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her, his eyes saying everything. He saw her, the real her, and he understood the sacrifice she had just made. "You risked everything," Ben finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "I had to build something real," she replied, echoing a sentiment he understood better than anyone. In that moment, their relationship was forged anew, not in secret, but in the fires of public conviction. The story went viral. Corporate architect goes rogue for community. Clara's inbox flooded with messages of support, job offers from nonprofits, and notes from young architects inspired by her courage. The public pressure on Sterling Landscapes and the developers became immense. A week later, Clara and Ben walked through the garden. It was a crisp autumn day, and the leaves were turning. "They want to meet," Ben said. "The developers. They're ready to discuss your plan." Clara stopped and looked at the garden. At this small patch of earth she had almost helped destroy and had instead saved. She was unemployed, and her future was uncertain. But for the first time since graduation, she felt free. The weight of her loans was still there, but it was no longer the anchor that defined her. The power she now felt came from her own integrity. Ben handed her a letter. It was from the Oakwood Neighborhood Association. It was a formal, if modest, offer to hire her as their consulting architect to lead the negotiations, her first client. He led her to a small, neglected corner of the garden. "I was thinking," he said, "this spot has a perfect southern exposure." He handed her a small bag of seeds, 4 heirloom tomatoes. She looked from the seeds to his smiling face and felt a profound, joyful love. They stood before the community members, unrolling her plans on a weathered picnic table. This time, she wasn't an outsider. She was their architect. She and Ben stood side by side, a team ready to build something better, together. Later that evening, on the fire escape of his apartment overlooking the neighborhood, he pulled her close. The fight wasn't over, but they had a foundation to build on, one of shared values and mutual respect. "Welcome home, plant person," he whispered. In her small apartment, Clara opened her laptop. She created a new folder, naming it The Commons. Inside, she created a new design file. The page was blank, a vast space of possibility. She smiled, a real, unburdened smile. The next Saturday, Clara was on her knees in the dirt of the Oakwood garden, a trowel in her hand, planting the tomato seeds. Ben was beside her, and all around them, the community was working, laughing, and growing. She was finally building something real, from the ground up,